All right, welcome back to The Explainer. In the business world, we are constantly getting bogged down by endless spreadsheets, rigid corporate hierarchies, the whole shebang. But today, we're taking a radically different approach. We are going to explore a really unique piece of writing that actually functions as a sort of hidden manifesto for modern, disruptive business leadership. It's titled Right Stoops to Serve. Let's get right into it.
An act that speaks louder than noise. That begs a massive question for anyone in a management role today, right? How do leaders actually cut through all that echoing corporate jargon to find true impact? We are surrounded by performative leadership and buzzwords. So how do we get to the action? Well, that perfectly sets up the insights of Oluyomi Ola-David, whose work we're analyzing today.
Okay, Section 1, the mind of a strategist.
Now, before we actually decode her strategy, we really need to understand the architect behind it all. Oluyomi Ola-David is this highly effective strategic thinker who views organizations through a super clear, purpose-driven lens. She proudly highlights her Nigerian heritage, which brings this fantastic global perspective to her work. But honestly, the most striking thing she states about herself is incredibly simple, yet impactful. She says, "I love people." Her whole foundation isn't built on extracting value from employees, but on elevating the people who actually create it. So, for the business leaders tuning in, her core focus areas are where her credibility just absolutely shines. She isn't just sitting around theorizing. She is actively focused on advancing global development, generating actionable solutions, influencing policy, and providing real organizational clarity. She leverages these exact pillars to align teams toward unified transformational goals. It's a real game changer.
Moving right along to Section 2, Service as a Business Foundation.
Her text kicks off with this line: "Service springs from the will." In corporate environments, service is often mistakenly viewed as a weakness, right? Like it's mere compliance or just doing the busy work. But Ola-David totally flips that narrative. By stating it springs from the will, she's translating service into an active, ironclad choice by a leader to serve their team and their mission way above their own personal ego. And this maps directly to one of the most proven, highly effective corporate strategies in modern management. We're talking about servant leadership. If you haven't heard of it, this is a leadership philosophy where the main goal of the leader is literally to serve. It's all about removing the executive ego to foster a stronger, more agile, and vastly more effective corporate culture. Honestly, Ola-David's contemplation here is essentially a masterclass in the exact psychology you need to pull this strategy off successfully.
Just look at the contrast between traditional management and her philosophy. It is stark. On one side, standard corporate leadership is often just plagued by empty messaging. Ola-David counters that with acts that are speaking louder than noise. And instead of those self-serving directives pushed top-down by out-of-touch executives, she advocates for waiting on a worthy one, which really means making careful, deliberate decisions that actually serve the organization's true mission.
Section 3. Removing organizational barriers.
Transitioning from that high-level philosophy into daily execution, she writes of a willingness that removes barriers. I want you to think about the bureaucratic bottlenecks that slow down your own company. You know the ones, the endless approval chains, the siloed departments, all that red tape that just stifles innovation. A true servant leader uses their authority not to build walls to protect their status, but to bulldoze the barriers that prevent their teams from doing their absolute best work.
And that naturally builds right into her next concept, a commitment that defies odds. Look, the market right now is incredibly volatile. Startups fail left and right. Established giants falter. So how do you survive? Well, by fostering a profound shared commitment within your teams. When a workforce actually knows that leadership is genuinely serving them, they develop this incredible resilience. They don't just show up for a paycheck anymore. They fight for a shared vision, completely defying whatever odds the market throws at them.
Which brings us to Section 4, Steering Prudent Ships.
We turn our focus outward to the markets here. Steering prudent ships. Just let the weight of that strategic vision land for a second. It implies immense responsibility. You aren't just driving a speedboat for a quick thrill on the weekend. As a business leader, you are steering a massive vessel with countless lives, careers, and resources on board.
So how do you steer that ship? Ola-David writes of a truth that steers prudent ships. This so brilliantly illustrates that in our current era of corporate scandals and misinformation, truth and ethics are literally your ultimate navigational tools. These prudent ships represent well-governed, highly ethical organizations that successfully navigate volatile global markets. And they do it not through deception or risky shortcuts, but through unwavering operational truth. Because when you operate with truth, you establish a way that remains standard. This line connects directly to the absolute necessity of creating sustainable, standardized best practices within an industry. Think about it. The companies that survive across decades, they're the ones whose standard operating procedures are so deeply rooted in integrity and service that they actually become the benchmark for their entire industry. They don't just follow the standard, they literally become it.
Finally, Section 5, the ultimate human capital.
Looking at the real return on investment here and the lasting legacy of a purpose-driven organization, Ola David speaks of a choice to build what lasts. This is pretty much the ultimate argument for sustainable models over fleeting short-term profits. Ask yourself, are you making decisions just to satisfy your shareholders for the next quarter? Or are you making the brave choice to build an infrastructure and a culture that will outlive your tenure and positively impact the market for generations?
And this brilliantly illustrates what might honestly be the most powerful paradigm shift in her entire text, a praise for the capital called life. Think about the sterile, almost robotic term we constantly use in business, human resources. We treat people like they're printer ink or server space. Ola David completely reframes this into the invaluable capital called life. Your employees are breathing, living capital. And when you praise, respect, and invest in that specific capital, your organization's potential becomes absolutely limitless.
So, let's summarize the key takeaways and the true ROI of her text. By adopting this servant-first, barrier-removing mindset, your business gains the power to foster real global transformation. You build the internal resilience needed to overcome impossible market odds. You operate with a truth that establishes lasting industry standards. And above all else, you learn to properly value the capital called life, unlocking the true potential of your entire workforce. So, I want to leave you with this really provocative question as we wrap up today's explainer. Take a hard look at your daily operations, your personal management style, and your long-term goals, and ask yourself, are you just building a business, or are you investing in the capital called life? Because according to the incredible insights of Ola David, the leaders who choose the latter are the only ones who will truly build what lasts. Thank you so much for joining me, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.